Baltimore's Post-Dispatch columnist, Tony Messenger. Good morning, Tony.
McGraw, when I start, good morning, McGraw. Good morning, Wendy.
Hi, Tony.
When I start listening to you do live reads for help, I've fallen and I can't get up. Then I'm going to know that we're going to have a talk. You're a step away from that. By the way, I've got like trifocals. So
you have to have somebody read. You have to have somebody read to you, right?
Tony.
My wife makes fun of me because for the last few years now, I've had these progressive lenses that are basically trifocals, and still, like the other day, I had to look up to change the thermostat, and I still have to lift my glasses up. And I mean, she's like, "Didn't you get that fixed?" I'm like, "They just don't work anymore. The eyes are just what they are."
Well, first of all, you should go to Elegant Readers, and then two, I've lost my shame a long time ago. I do commercials for R&R Sanitation Porta Potties. I have no shame left.
And tomorrow's program is brought to you by St. Louis Trusses. So he's working it.
All right, Tony. You have taken on the NFL protests and have found some bipartisan support for the NFL protests. Explain this.
Well, not so much for the protests, but an underlying idea in a state rep's idea that I think is a bad idea. So this week, State Rep Nate Walker, who's from Kirksville, he's a farmer in northeast Missouri, didn't file a bill, but issued a news release in which he said that Missouri has to protect its investment. And by protecting its investment, he means that because we've given all of these incentives to NFL teams, including the long-departed St. Louis Rams and the Kansas City Chiefs on the other side of the state, that he believes the players who are protesting police brutality by taking a knee during the anthem, or in some cases before the anthem, or in some cases raising their fist, he believes they're damaging the NFL brand, and so that it is the job of the Missouri legislature to do something, he doesn't know what yet, but to do something to protect its investment. And I talked to him about this. Walker is an interesting guy. He's not a far right Republican who supports crazy ideas. In fact, he has stood against, famously, Rex Sinquefield voted against a tax cut. He sent a letter last year to Governor Eric Greitens, or earlier this year, to try to get him to veto SB 43, the bill that made it easier for businesses to discriminate against the state. So he's an interesting guy. And I called him to talk about this. And one of the things he told me when we were talking about this is, maybe that we should have some other investments than giving this money to the NFL. Maybe we're giving some of our tax incentives to the wrong idea. And I pointed out to him, he may find a whole lot of support on both sides of the aisle for that idea, totally separate from what I think is a silly idea to try to punish NFL players who are exercising their First Amendment rights. But the interesting thing about that timing is that yesterday, State Auditor Nicole Galloway had a news conference in which she talked about this very idea, that the state doesn't do a very good job tracking the tax incentives it gives to big business. And so I wrote this column this week about how I think State Representative Walker stumbled onto something. I don't think he intended to, but he stumbled onto this interesting idea. This state has a problem with tax incentives, and if it really wants to protect its investment, it's got a whole lot of tax incentives it ought to be looking at and determining whether or not they're actually working for the state's citizens.
So I guess any way you get there, you get there.
Yeah, I mean, I think he got there accidentally. I think he was trying to make a political point. He's running for state senate, and I think he was trying to ingratiate himself with the Trump crowd. And I think in doing so, he damaged his own brand. But he raises an interesting point, and I hope he listens to it.
Right.
The state does have a problem with tax incentives.
All while they're getting ready to give billions in tax incentives to Amazon to come to the state.
Yeah, presumably.
Right.
So, we're not actually talking about when we've done big projects like this before, we would have a special session where these things were debated. Governor Greitens has basically said, well, I'll talk to Amazon, and then we'll figure it out later. So, we may make a proposal as a state to Amazon and not really know what we're offering to give away as citizens at this point.
Tony, never
Good way to run a railroad.
never a dull moment. Tony, thanks for checking in.
Good to talk.